Okay, we are going to get started. My name is Evan Kravitz. I'm a career counselor at Arapahoe Community College. It's nice to meet everyone virtually. The workshop, or I'm sorry, the presentation that we're all about to see is assessment for co-curricular programs from McCally and Neecee Matthews Bradshaw. Before I turn it over to Neecee and Ann, just wanted to remind you that if you do have questions about PDUs, you can email Mandy Myers, and I put her email in the chat room. I will also be monitoring the chat room during this presentation, so if you have any questions, please feel free to post them. But now I have the great pleasure of turning this over to Neecee and Ann.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Good morning. I'm Ann McCally, and we're very pleased to see the turnout here and be able to participate in this wonderful event. We'll just go through a quick overview of who we are and how we got here, and then our agenda, and get into sharing our topic with you all. We're very excited, and we're also hoping to hear from you on who's participating in this area within their institutions, and hopefully we'll have a vibrant Q&A at the end of our time together. As said, I'm the Director of Student Learning and Support here at CCD. That's just a nice long phrase for all things tutoring and digital literacy. How we got to this conference is we started dabbling with our institutional ISLOs, or institutional learning outcomes. What was it, a couple of years ago? Dr. Neecee was on the committee for the Student Learning Committee, and she would bring it up every now and then, and we just kind of put our heads together and go, is this a sandbox we can play in, and how? And as we started doing the work together, we're like, we can do this. This is something we can definitely do. And we feel that we can be, as co-curricular programs and student services, that we can be valuable contributors in this area and provide a much needed lens to complement what the academic lens might bring to student learning outcomes. So we just really are coming at it from the standpoint that this work is something we can all do and be effective with, and really help support our institution's success. And so then we'll let Neecee describe or introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Neecee Matthews Bradshaw, and I am the coordinator for our Writing Zone. And one of the things that we really kind of attached to as we started looking at these ISLOs, our institutional student learning objectives, was that we have such a diverse population of students, and we really felt like the ways that we bring those students together in the Excel zone in our tutoring space is a great example for how we are caring for those different groups of people. We serve a large population of students who are BIPOC, who are women, and we are a Hispanic serving institution. So we see in those opportunities a way to connect to the aims of inclusion and diversity in our tutoring zone. So we're gonna go ahead and get started, and we'll begin by talking a little bit about how we view ourselves connected to this co-curricular assessment. So in each institution, there are different kinds of student learning objectives that are important. So the first thing that we found is that as I started hearing about the ISLOs we have at CCD, I really did feel like, because they were looking at so many different areas of learning, we had a unique opportunity in our tutoring center to be a part of that assessment and to demonstrate how students are learning and bringing together these objectives that we have for them. So the first thing we did was to review the ISLOs, and we'll define those as we present our examples. And then we scanned the departmental environment for our alignment with those ISLOs. So we needed to determine if we had a tool that worked, and then if we needed to create a tool. Lucky for us, we had been creating a different tool for tutoring assessment, and that became a pivotal piece, and you'll see that in how we created our connections to co-curricular assessment. And then once we had done that review and scanned the department, we started to collect and assess those artifacts. Now, I do want to mention that at this point in time at CCD, we're still working to engage co-curricular departments in assessment. So we don't necessarily see the same kind of involvement in each co-curricular group, but this is how we've connected ourselves to the institutional assessment.
Yep. And we're also learning from this work as we've kind of put our toes in the water now. How is it informing our work, and how will it continue to inform our work collectively as a department in the assessment area? Before we were able to play in that sandbox, so to speak, we had to consider the question of, does my department, the Excel zone or the Excel zone, align with CCD's ISLO? So it was first important for us to consider how ISLOs actually aligned with the function of tutoring and digital literacy. So we kind of flipped the question. Basically, we wrote a position statement, kind of like a research question, to guide our thought process. And, we felt that, like many co-curricular programs, student services, differ from instruction. So in our space, it was specifically the function of tutoring is to facilitate student learning through the development of their thinking processes and to help them become self-reliant learners. So we're an extension of what happens in the classroom on the students' learning side of this question. So the simplest way to kind of describe it is we engage students using questioning tactics to get students to figure out how to think and answer their own questions so they can eventually do their own work independently. So you can begin to see where we were kind of going, are we instruction? Are we not like instruction? And we found that we're not. We just definitively said we're not, because instruction, who is the owner of curriculum, they design it, they implement it, they establish assignments, they grade assignments. We, as a tutoring department, facilitate the student learning of those assignments. So we thought that Excel's assessment in relation to ISLOs should not be based on what students are doing for their classes, but rather how they access our department services. The reason, go ahead.
No, you have. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. The reason for this is it's not our purview as a department to grade student work. We don't create the assignments students bring to us. We can help students get their voice out there, their individual perspective, and cultivate that into their work. But we can't claim the students' work that they bring to us from their courses because, simply put, curriculum is owned by instruction. So we can claim the interactions that occur within our services. And I think that this might be a very important point as we go on. So with that in mind, we found that we could align with the ISLOs by observing the elements of assignments brought to us from students' requests in the tutoring assistance realm and through specifically student behaviors and the interaction with our tutors. And you'll see that come out as we describe and align our artifacts with each of the ISLOs. So that's our foundation. And so what I'd like to show you as another integral part of the foundation for our conversation today is our assessment tool, the Tutoring Assessment Survey. This was a tool, and we'll go to I think the next slide, Neecee.
Okay.
This is a tool we started creating in 3 years ago, May 2018, for a whole different purpose. But it's very quickly come clear to us that it's pivotal to us in a lot of our assessment work. A session log, first of all, is a tool that documents the tutor interaction from the tutor's perspective. It was tested first in one of our academic units, the digital zone, and then we modeled it and tried to refine it as we fanned it out to writing, math, and ESL. And academic coaching. And as we repeated it, we were able to, calibrate it and get it more succinct. And so what we actually ended up doing was creating a centralized structure for all of our areas in our department to report out on almost all data points being relatively the same with some slight modification and nuances by subject area. This gave us a reliable tool so that we could demonstrate departmental results in a consistent point of view. It actually is serving out as now a tool to report out to our leadership teams our lead and lag measures and how effective, what's the intervention of tutoring. And so what you'll see on the screen that Dr. Neecee has up is we are collecting student S number. And then there's this long middle section, the specific skills assistance. That is actually about 4 or 5 boxes dedicated to math, 4 or 5 boxes dedicated to writing, 4 or 5 boxes dedicated to ESL and Digital Zone and academic coaching. So the tutor will just skip to that section that pertains to them. And by the way, the only tutors see this. The students do not see this. Then under type of support, we define, did the student require the tutor to work with basic skills that they should have had before they came to the Excel Zone tutoring for that course or before coming to college? Or was it course content? Did we have to reteach material, which we are very careful about that? And then the service result. This is very important too. We gave 3 different service results. One was achieved understanding. That's a very rare one to get. 2 is made improvement. The tutor observed that the student made improvement within that 30 or 40-minute session. And then the 3rd was additional sessions required or suggested. A lot of the time we live in the made improvement. It's very rare we actually hit the achieved understanding because the learning curve takes time. And you'll see that as we look at our output of this session log in the Excel format. And then the comment section. The comment section is what tutors do to justify if they gave an achieved understanding or other important notes that might pertain to another tutor should the student go to a different tutor. So this is our 2 key principles we're moving forward off of now. So we're going to go into the alignment portion of the ISLOs to our work now that you have our thought framework and such. So Neecee, go ahead with your part.
So the first ISLO that we've looked at is critical thinking, and it's defined as the student will analyze information and ideas from multiple perspectives and articulate an argument, opinion, or conclusion based on that analysis. So we started to look for this in the session logs in terms of how we're collecting data from those sessions. So this is again the assessment form, and then what we get from the report. And Ann's going to explain what these pieces are.
Yeah, so we're just reminding you on the right, that's our session log. It's blank, but if it were filled out, what you're seeing in the main part of the screen is one of the ways it can come out of the system. And that was also critical in our thought process in creating it, is knowing what the system tool is and what its capabilities are so we can extract the data we knew we needed. So that was a little bit of fun, making a square, what is it? A square peg fit in a circle. Anyway, this is a completed session log. You're seeing about 5 sessions over a period of, I want to say 2 weeks. This tutor's name in the middle of this is changing. So it's, I'm going to just read. I don't have my readers. We have Dawn, Leo, and Maria, and Kathy. And then our student is Peter. And what you'll see here is Peter's first meeting, he was able to explain what his issue was, which was a good thing. He was able to say that he's having problems with co-functions. And so through Excel tutoring, he was able to then gain exposure to 4 different perspectives on the topic through these different tutors. And then after Peter discussed the topic and related topics with that through the 3 other tutors, you'll see that the 4th tutor in the bottom left or bottom right column was able to assess Peter's progress and determine he achieved understanding. And what the tutor is giving as a feedback or justification for that rating is marked achieved understanding. After observing the student is able to draw his own conclusions about the graphs of sine and cosine functions, and he is fluent enough with these concepts to extend his understanding to transformations of these functions. So you can see that not only was Peter able to resolve his original issue, he was able to synthesize his own understanding of the topic at a much more advanced level, and which during the meeting, Kathy, gave him the approval of achieved understanding, but was able to say not only was he sufficient with fluency wise, he was transforming or being able to do more complex work by transformations of sine and cosine.
Okay, and then the next piece of data we're collecting is for the ISLO for effective communication. Students will communicate a central guiding idea to a defined audience for that concrete purpose. Again, we return to the session logs, and you'll see as we get further in, there are some different things that we're looking at as evidence, but the session logs are really pivotal in how we're collecting evidence for our assessment.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So conceptually speaking, how Dr. Neecee helped me and our team get to this point, I would say, is we really had to think about tutoring serves as the audience which students must make clear requests and communicate those requests to us. And I'm sure many of you can understand sometimes students don't know how to put into words what their need is. They just know that they need you. They've been sent to you or us by an instructor because something's not working well for them. And it's hard to get them to verbalize it in some cases. So being able to effectively communicate in this realm to us meant, can they communicate their need with us? And one thing I should share is every time a tutor sits down with a student at the beginning of the session, they work with the student and the two of them collaborate on what are the 3 goals I want to accomplish during this time. And they make sure that they're goals that they can actually get done in that time frame. And then at the end of the session, the tutor and the student sit back and go, you know, the student actually evaluates themselves. Did I achieve my goals? Where did I struggle? And what were the tools the tutor gave me to overcome those struggles? So in this example, you're seeing a student again who has seen us, but only 2 times now. In the session log on the pink circle on the right, you're going to see her notes to us telling us what her needs are. And it starts off with, I'm a new student. I'm 32 years old, looking for some help editing my very first essay before turning it in. And that's it. Now, first of all, it was pretty impressive. She actually could put that down and she figured out how to do that in our notes function of our system. But then secondly, she made another appointment about a day or 2 later, and she put a note saying, we'll be describing the rough draft of my essay and you will be giving me feedback based on these questions. And then she proceeded to list all 4 probing questions that the instructor gave to the students to help them prep for, here's what I need help with. And very specific guidelines. That's the big fat paragraph. I don't know how well you can read it on your end. And then the last thing, about a half an hour after she put that note in, she goes, oh, by the way, here's my email. Let me know if you want me to send my rough draft to you before our session. So this is a student that is like, okay, I'm communicating. I'm going to make sure they know what I need so that we're ready to go when we get there.
The third one that we look at, and I think our evidence comes up most in math. So I don't have personal experience with the quantitative literacy piece, but it's quantitative literacy. So it's about students interpreting, representing, and analyzing the mathematical information. So we use the session logs, but here we were also able to look at our regular tutor observations, which coordinators carry out. And then thanks to our remote settings, we are using WebEx for our tutoring sessions. So we're recording those sessions and then using those for training purposes, for review of how that training manifests in our more seasoned tutors, and then being able to, again, look at this evidence of the ISLO.
Mm-hmm. So I guess I'll do the first example of the session log for that one. And I'll describe it here. It'll be, again, from the Excel spreadsheet. If you'll flip screens real quick, Dr. Neecee.
Where do you want me to
Yay.
I thought I'm in it already. Mm-hmm. Is that not the?
There it is. Okay, so in this example, you're seeing that the student came visit us 9 different times over a period of 3 weeks. So you're seeing the dates on the right, or on the left, the time frames. The course is physics, the service is math, obviously. Our student's name is Chuck, and we did redact and give them alternative names. And then Marcus is our tutor. Chuck scheduled the appointment, and then our outcomes from the tutor on the right. So in the right, the tutor's just saying, hey, I introduced the student to using integrals for electronic fields that are not systematic. And then Chuck got to see Marcus again, and the next session, the tutor's notes are continued practicing the application of this tool to various different problems. And then you see a period of no notes. And for me, that tells me that they're working on it. They're working on it. So most likely those logs were all made improvement. And then we get to the bottom session log where it says, student is achieving or demonstrating fluency and applying integrals to electric charge distributions. He is able to identify when this method can be used, and he is confident in his ability to apply this method on his own. So this was likely an achieved understanding session. And then the other example of the tutor observation is just kind of the verbal, when you're dropping in on a student-teacher interaction, and you can hear the banter between the student and the tutor and the progress being made. And what you hear is in this particular session that we observed, the student's aha moment was when they described to the tutor the actual understanding of how to apply a word problems, a solution to multiple other math examples. So the student's saying, hey, okay, this is easy. This one now makes sense to me. And then the student reads the next problem. And then the student says, I'm guessing you do the same thing here and you just do it again. And he looks at the tutor and the tutor just goes, well, let's see, try it. And then the student goes, okay. And he did it and he goes, okay, so I can do that. This is simple enough. And let's see what the next part is. He reads the next problem. And then the student says, all right, that's pretty straightforward actually. And he reads the next problem. All right, that's pretty straightforward too. His pace starts picking up and he's no longer looking to the tutor for that verbal cue or advice. So that was a way we could use some of our face-to-face interactions as evidence. We had, documented it from that standpoint. So like Neecee, Dr. Neecee was saying, we do have other assessment tools to get to these alignments, but this is what we're using here. All right.
All right, so our fourth ISLO is evidence of intercultural literacy. And this one, I think, gave us some different places to look for the evidence. Students apply a set of cognitive, affective, and behavioral skills to effectively interact in a variety of cultural contexts. And the examples that we have here are the Mirror of the World, which is our ESL collaboration. Our ESL coordinator and the ESL department work together to put together this publication of student writing. Then we use cross-training to make sure that our tutors are aware of how to be culturally sensitive when they work with students from different backgrounds than their own. We also have the Motivation Station, which is a message board, and then our digital film fest. So I'm going to show you some examples of some of these pieces. The Mirror of the World is the first one that I'll show you. And this publication, it's been put out for several years now. I'll just kind of let you see what our last year's look like. But essentially, it's student written, and then our ESL coordinator, Ryan Sethry, goes through and helps the students to write their contributions. They're writing about their backgrounds, their family life, the culture shock that they experience when they come to this community college, but the ways that they engage with the writing is really interesting because we get such a wide variety of students, and it's a moment that we celebrate on campus. They pass out copies of the Mirror of the World to their friends and family. I usually have a kind of potluck where they come and bring in some of their favorite dishes. So it's a really awesome opportunity for students and faculty to engage in a meaningful way. Our tutor training What we do in those cases is we work with the tutor specifically to think about the ways that there might be some assumptions we are making that we need to get rid of. We might have some misconceptions that we need to address when we work with students from different backgrounds. But that I find to be really helpful, especially since we have such a diverse population of students. The motivation station, we've had these up. I'm sorry, I think there's a siren in the background. We have these up in our different zones, but essentially it's a big board that we write motivational messages on. And then because we have such a diverse staff of student workers, they help by putting up their own motivations, translating them into different languages. You'll often see messages in Arabic or in Russian or in I think we've seen some in Chinese, Japanese,
Farsi.
Korean, yes, Farsi. So we have tons of these different messages, and then the students come up and they can take one. We ask that they put another one up. And it's just a really good way to engage and motivate students as they're going through midterms, finals. So this is something that not only the staff looks forward to, but the students look forward to when they're in the tutoring space. And then the Digital Film Fest. And this is a place where lots of students are able to come in and contribute through digital storytelling their own connections to our topic themes. We give scholarships on their videos, and I think they've just increased the amount for next year. Is that correct? The amount for the scholarship?
Yes, we did. And we had a really, thankfully, even with this environment we have all gone through this last year, we still were able to have a film festival this year. And I'd argue some of our submissions were probably the strongest we've had in a while. One of them was a student who was experimenting with a fish camera, which is that little ball that sits on your head. And she was riding through Santa Fe, the art district, and the alleys to identify murals and artists and what the impetus was behind their art. But she led into the conversation with what is the difference of graffiti, tagging, and murals, and what's the culture behind each one of those three areas, and what's acceptable and not acceptable. And then we just got this tremendous tour of some fabulous art and the history of the artist and their work. Right in our own backyard. Santa Fe is right next to CCD, and it was a phenomenal presentation by that student.
So before we shift, I noticed that we did have a question in the chat. Is there a place you document demographics or age information to help evaluate the type of work you do with students, older students, ESL, etc.?
This is a great question. We are working with our IR department on collecting that information. We just started the work, I'd say about a month ago, and we're finding, interestingly, we are finding our first gen students, they are finding us, and that we're serving a lot of women as well. We'll keep following where the path leads us, but definitely we need to get to that information to help know who we're working with and how we can serve them differently and better, and how we can also communicate and reach out to them and let them know we are here for them.
So let's go to the next slide. So collecting and assessing. And I think this would be the case at most institutions. You will not necessarily be able to assess everything. So your first step is to determine which ISLOs you can readily assess. As I mentioned earlier, we're in a unique position because we do have more than one kind of tutoring zone, and that gives us access to all of the ISLOs. Then we determine which artifacts can be used. So there are some elements that, for example, in a curricular group, they might be looking at the student's assignment. We don't use the student's assignments as one of the artifacts because those assignments are given out from another source. And because we are not engaged in the process of grading those assignments, we don't really, we don't claim that piece of evidence. But then we would determine what we do have that needs to be redacted. So you'll have seen in some of our previous examples, we changed the names of tutors and students to protect their identity. But it doesn't mean that you have to reinvent. We were lucky in that the tool that we collected our data from made a nice entry into how we connect with these ISLOs. But in co-curricular groups, you might look at your enrollment or re-enrollment rates. You might look at registration or re-registration rates, drop and withdrawal rates, academic SAP, and then student communications, how the students are demonstrating understanding, whether there are alerts coming in, or things related to what they're enrolling in or their advising appointments. So we found that in our efforts to get other co-curricular groups on our campus involved, these are some of the pieces of evidence that are most useful to them, kind of engaging with the material and getting involved in that assessment. So I think we went through that way faster than, so we have another question. I might have missed this, but do your ISLOs have a designated rubric that you use to evaluate each one? Yes. So the SLC committee, we developed those rubrics. We look at whether it's an emerging skill or whether it's an achieved skill or whether there's development that needs to be done. And then those rubrics are how each department is judging whether or not students are accomplishing a particular ISLO. So for example, we set up a peer review where the chairs of those different departments submit their evidence and their artifacts. And then we, the members of SLC, sit down and review the evidence that they've submitted based on how they saw themselves falling into the rubric, and then to kind of triangulate. Do we also see that the evidence they presented shows that those students are falling within a certain field in the rubric? Do you have a way to follow up with the student to allow them to evaluate the service they received? Yes, yes, we do. So throughout the semester, and this is something that we have kind of changed as we moved remote, but it's actually a tool that we want to keep using when we get back in face-to-face classes. We have a student evaluation that the tutor fills out that the student fills out at the end of the session. So they receive this through their email. Is that correct, Anne? It's emailed to them, right?
The tutor evaluation, no, it's actually on their homepage when they log into the appointment scheduling tool, and they can click on a live link there to complete their assessment.
It is anonymous.
Yeah, it is anonymous. And then when we're in person on campus, they'll have the opportunity to do it paper-driven format or the electronic format, so that they have both modalities.
Yes, and in the past when we did it, it was also anonymous on paper. So though it does identify the tutor's name so that we can give them that feedback, it doesn't identify the student, doesn't identify when their session was or what subject they were working on. It just looks at how the tutor facilitated that session.
And it's not a one-shot survey. It's available to students throughout the semester. So they can give us feedback that way at any time. CCD also has this emoji feedback system that everybody has in their departments, which is another way. It's a super simple thumbs up, middle of the road, or thumbs down type of a system. And they just take the slip and put it in a jar, and we have at least some documentation that we either hit the mark or we didn't. The student can also provide feedback there in terms of the customer service piece, or their overall experience as they interact obviously with our front desk person. They interact with the person that sets them up with tutoring in the department they want the tutoring service with, and then the tutor. So it's collecting a little bit larger feedback.
I think too, one thing that we try to keep in mind in our tutoring space is that because we have lots of students coming in with different kinds of situations, that training that we offer the tutors is really important to making sure that they they are engaging with the students in a way that doesn't make them feel ostracized or uncomfortable with the tutoring process. So I see 2 more questions. Hold on, let me.
So one is the hiring process of tutors. And so we have a couple approaches to that. We obviously post the job descriptions, and we're looking for peer tutors and professional tutors so that we can have both opportunities to give students the choice between someone that they would relate with. And we do also have a lot of faculty who can point us out or point actual students to us too that are qualified and interested in applying. Once they're on board, we do put all tutors through our tutor training. And then they do tutor observations and role play, and they need to complete our tutor training to be able to be on the floor independently.
Yes. And I think actually to add to that, I think that has been a part of the puzzle piece that I would say has been pretty challenging, just in that because we're not physically in the same space, some of our role playing has gone a little differently. We've been using breakout rooms and things like that, but there's something about tutoring that makes it difficult to kind of engage in, I think, a more natural way. We've gotten much better. I've been so impressed with how our tutors have stepped up to using the online platforms, and I think that students too are getting a really good experience, but I wish that there are ways we could make it easier, a little more seamless. Another question is your institution one that has figured out a way to let the students know they are being evaluated on the ISLOs, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom? So this is a yes, but we post our ISLOs in the classrooms. I think there's actually, and we've gone through the SLC has gone through the process of creating new posters right before we went remote. So we do kind of advertise them in class. They are included in our syllabi, but I do think that engagement with ISLOs is something that needs to be reinforced further. So we're continuing to work on how to work with our shareholders on informing them about what the ISLOs are and how they come up in classes. In the syllabus, for example, instructors are supposed to identify which ISLOs are gained in our learning objectives. So there are ways that we try to bring that to students, but I do think that there are ways that we could improve that process. I hope that answered your question, Hannah.
Well, and we're a little bit we're creating a 5-year plan to present to executive leadership on how this is going to unfold in a more comprehensive manner, which I think will help get to the impetus of, I think, of that question. How are students being informed and finding out what the results of our learning outcomes is? I mean, it's about ROI. Students want to know they're getting the return on investment, and that their work is also important to our success. And our success is a collective effort. It's not just the institution's success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the next question is, has CCD expanded assessment beyond tutoring? Actually, I would say it's the reverse. CCD is already doing lots of assessment beyond in curricular programs. What we're trying to do from our tutoring center is to show other co-curricular programs how to get engaged, because it's really in the co-curricular programs where we see a dearth of understanding of assessment. So the assessment has been ongoing, and what we're trying to do now is to get more engagement from the co-curricular groups. Let's see, is there any analysis of impact on student success, i.e. is assessment of tutoring support reflected in the bigger picture? I think so. We do look at, and I guess Anne probably answer this better, because we are trying to track student grades. We've got some kinks that we're trying to work out of that, but I'll let Anne kind of answer
Yeah, that's a little bit of a slippery slope because we don't own the students' grades, but the tutoring assessments that we conduct every time do serve as an immediate point of feedback that says, is the interaction demonstrating success? You know, if we could get access to some more midterm or you know, first of semester, midterm, and end of semester grades, I think we could have a little bit of an alignment to how well the intervention is working. But the one challenge is there's multiple other resources students can get tutoring from at CCD. So it's hard for any one of our services to say, we're the intervention that's really contributing to the student's success. Now, from a very big picture point of view, we do look at grades, and we can see that students who come to tutoring and come see us at least, you know, 4 or 6 times and beyond, because let's be honest, it's like practicing. You don't become an MBA all-star without practicing. It's the same thing for student learning. The more you practice it, you know, more you work on it, the more you get out of it. But we are seeing that difference in the intervention versus the students that do not come to tutoring. So we can speak to it from a very surface level, but I wouldn't hang my hat on this is our product, because it is a collective effort.
So we have about 5 minutes left. Are there any other questions? Don't see any others in the chat. I would just like to say I'm really interested in what we're going to see happening with our co-curricular programs getting more involved in this. I think when you're not on the instruction side of the table, it can feel a little overwhelming to get engaged in this process, but we definitely have lots of opportunities. And I think our other co-curricular programs have lots of opportunities to present how we're working with students to help them to close those achievement gaps and to get them more engaged with what's going on campus and with those ISLOs.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know who is already doing co-curricular assessment here. So we're at the Student Affairs Conference for our system. I wonder who in co-curricular is already doing things, and what are some of the things you're collecting evidence-wise. I don't know if anybody be willing to share out.
This is Jessica Medina at Lamar Community College. I don't mind sharing for a little bit. We use Navigate to do the early alert system and a mid alert system. We also have added in the last couple semesters an athletic check that happens before census date. So if we have any athletes that haven't been showing up, it's a really quick check to get coaches involved to make sure that they get shown up to those classes so they don't get dropped for no show. And then all of a sudden there's no classes left for them to enroll in except for online. And then we work with tutoring, and they check in through Navigate so we can see, and they can choose just general tutoring, or they can pick a specific class. And then we're able to drill down in the early alert and midterm alert to see whether or not that person is on early alert or midterm alert based on that class. And then we will see, after we've received the early alert or midterm alert, we reach out to the students to encourage them to do the tutoring, and then we track that to see, did they do it, and did that make a difference in their final grade? Were they, if they were on early alert for a class, were they still on it for midterm alert? And what was our response when we reached out to them when we closed the cases that are in there? We kind of go through that process to kind of start doing that.
Yeah, and then were they on multiple alerts as well, which, you know, can enrich that feedback too. Yeah, cool. Who else is doing something they'd be willing to share? And I know Evan's back watching us. We have 2 minutes, it looks like.
Less than. Tanya had a point in the comments. There's also some intervention effectiveness and demographic data in Navigate that can help with assessment. And Wendith had a question. I don't know, and you might not agree, but Wendith was asking if teachers are the main ones sending us students. And I think it's the students. Like, I've seen students bring other students. I've seen students tell other students you need to get to tutoring.
And funny you ask. We just looked at our alerts too, and the majority of our students are coming on their own. And yes, they're getting alerts, but there was a large majority of students that did not receive an alert, and were coming to us. So, and that was distinguishing between unique users. So not, it was kind of a surprise to me. It was good in a way that it tells us we are finding our students and telling them about our services and inviting them in, and they're choosing to come to us. But we also want to see alerts directing students to us in their times and needs and working as well.
So I think that's our time.
Yeah, we are at time, but Anne and Neecee, thank you so much for this presentation. It was terrific.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it really was terrific, guys, and I'm glad folks got to ask a bunch of questions. And again, for those of you who have questions about PDUs, you can email Mandy Myers at the system office. I put her email in the chat room. And Neecee and Anne, are you able to stick around for a couple of minutes in case anyone has any additional questions?
Sure.
Yes, definitely.
We'd be glad to.
Great. So the three of us will stick around for a couple of minutes, but thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. I'm glad we had time for questions. Sometimes I feel like we're not gonna be able to answer people's questions.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a lot of great questions towards the end.
Really, and these give us lots of ideas too about other things we can be working on.
Yeah, we're just getting started with co-curricular assessment.
Yeah, I think the issue is that it can be kind of overwhelming when you aren't creating classroom content to see where your place is in assessment. But I honestly feel like student affairs organizations are a big part of that piece of assessment that goes missing. I know when I was doing my doctoral study, we were using Neecee data to look at student engagement. And one of the things that really stood out to me was how much of the other stuff students needed to kind of process what those ISLOs were and what they were learning. And you don't always see it directly in the classroom. It's coming out in other elements of what the students are doing.
Oh, I agree completely with that.
Yeah, I didn't know how it would work either. I mean, which was a shock to me because I've been in very matrixed organizations of higher ed, and I've been assessed in those situations, and knew that the tools were there, but being out of that environment for a while and now being in this environment, learning, our department's role and place at the institution, and then kind of going, well, how can we assess ourselves differently than what's been put in front of us before? This really started opening up the doors of, we need to do more. And I hope that was clear that we're open to doing more, and we're gonna keep going until we refine it, because that's part of assessment. It's never done.
I saw that Anna had a question about getting the recording, Evan.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to Mandy about that. I think she had these automatically set to record, but I'll talk to Mandy about it.
Ooh, I spy Mike Norwicki. Hey, Mike, glad you were here.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah. And Michael was here too. Were you here the whole time?
I missed the first few minutes because I was in another meeting.
When do we get to call you doctor?
I still have the dissertation part and one more class.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Well, you got the two of us cheering you on.
Thank you. It's hard to stay motivated right now, but I'll get there.
Yeah. You got it. You got it. You need a motivation station.
Yeah.
I do.
That's what you need. I'm telling you. My daughter saw those and was like, Mommy, can I have one even if I'm not a student? And I'm like, if you need motivation, I think you can.
She just had to put one up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The hard part is they're having us start on our dissertation while we're still in classes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big new model.
All working. So that's a little much. I can pick two.
Yeah. I mean, if you can do a large part of your lit review and get a sense of the study you want to do, that'll launch you out of the door after comps really, really quickly. And so a lot of people are modeling that now. But it is hard because I was a kid in a candy store. I just like, what do I want to do? You know, and I needed to pick a horse and get on it.
Narrow it down. It's just a matter of writing right now, or finishing the full proposal.
Yeah.
Ooh.
All right.
I think we're, Carrie, did you have any questions? Or
Jill,
I see you're on too. If you do, your microphones are muted, so you need to unmute.
they may have just already stepped away.
Okay, well, I'm going to step into my next meeting. But
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you so much, Evan. Thank you.
it was a terrific presentation, really.
Thank you.
Oh, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.